Welcome to our October info session series. We're really excited to kick this off this year in support of our education community that we're creating here, helping parents and students kind of answer questions that may be top of mind. I'm really excited about this particular session. We onboarded a new partner, Envision by World Strides onboarded a new partner early last summer. We were introduced to Polygents, an extremely innovative group of like-minded individuals who are very mission-driven and also focused on student development. And today, I'm really honored to welcome Amanda Shagoya, one of Polygents' directors. She's got a background in psychology, business, and product strategy. Amanda has spent her career studying what motivates people and how they make choices. She's led marketing and product strategy at companies like IDEO and Ergo Baby, translating insights from real families into award-winning products and programs. Today, she's going to bring that same extra expertise to us and help our students discover and tell their own unique stories through research and real-world projects. So, Amanda, I'll stop my portion and turn the floor over to you. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Jan. Yes, hello, everybody. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. I'm super excited to chat with you about how research and real-world work experience can build critical skills for college and career success, and why hands-on learning is the key to giving teens the edge. So let's dive right in. Jan already did a lot of this for me. I am Amanda Chagoya. I'm a director at Polygents. He, mentioned formerly I was at IDEO and Ergo Baby. What wasn't part of that bio is I am passionate about education. So I've run for my local school board. I am on the board of my, I guess it's my county's science and engineering fair. And so as somebody who's passionate about education, and then of course passionate about learning about people and what makes them do what they do and decide what they decide. I'm really excited to talk with you today about what makes an admissions director or an employer decide that somebody is worth bringing into their college community, or inviting into their college community, or inviting into their team, their professional workplace. So I'll just dive right in. And I think that this is something that a lot of people say, and we hear it from so many different places, because it's true that these days it goes beyond grades and test scores. Back in my day, like if you got all A's, if you did well on the SAT, you were going to get into a good school. And it's like, those were the good old days, right? Because now so many students are just amazing with their GPAs, with their test scores. And so if you think about it, when you're looking at a bunch of applications, or if you're, whether that's college or whether it's, internship placements or even first-time employers, what they're looking at is a lot of the same. And so then they have to start looking for things that are different. And what are those different things that they're looking for? Really, what they're looking for are thinkers, doers, creators, and problem solvers. One thing that we do at Polygents is, it's actually the main thing that we do, is we work with students to do independent research projects, academic university level research projects. And so those sorts of projects help students to move from memorizing facts, which is a lot of what we do in the standards-based schools, to applying knowledge in meaningful ways. So we're going to get into how that happens. So yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, I totally get that I am supposed to be a doer, a thinker, a problem solver, a creator. How do I get there? Well, the answer is that, traditional education, so the way that schools are set up right now, has left a lot of students focused on memorization and measuring themselves against standards. And that's because so many curriculum are standards-based. So academic research and real world work experience and hands-on, campus experience, like what you get in the summers with Envision, gives students the opportunity to differentiate themselves and find their own direction and kind of build their own story. And so you can see these examples here. To become a thinker, students have to really dive deep into a subject and grapple. I love that word. So, struggle, right? It is the struggle actually that builds somebody into a thinker and a deep learner. And the other thing that's key is open ended inquiry. I think we all know that studying to the test doesn't really produce deep learning. And that's because those are easy questions, right? They have an answer. Either you got it right or you didn't. But the world isn't really filled with those types of questions. The world is filled with open ended questions that maybe don't have an answer or have many answers. And you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons and choose which one, to basically place your bets with. Um, so to become a thinker, that grappling, that struggle, the open-ended inquiry, kind of digging in and doing that work, and then coming out on the other side with your own insights, not an answer to a question that is on a rubric or somebody is correcting and saying yes or no. You're finding your own insights. You're kind of finding your own answers, and that is something that we don't have enough opportunity to do, kind of like in the typical school day. Another thing, colleges and employers are looking for doers. So it's about going beyond learning about a concept and then actually applying it to something in the real world, something that you're not really able to do at school. In fact, in my work, I, get to talk to a lot of students, and they say, I feel ready. I've studied. I want to actually have an impact. I finally want the opportunity to kind of see what I can do in the real world. I know the classroom isn't the real world, and I'm waiting for my chance to get out there and see what I can do. And coming, you know, into those opportunities actually is really hard for a high schooler. I can say that, again, back in my day, it was easy to get an after school job. Now it's a whole lot harder, for various reasons. So we're proud at Polygons to have a program that actually does allow students to kind of get out into the world, and we can maybe talk about that at the end. But applying that, um, basically everything, all the concepts that you've learned in the classroom to something that is actually out in the real world, a real problem that will have real impact, and you can see what happens from your work, is key to becoming a doer. The next thing is to become a creator. So when you have those insights, it's one thing to kind of have them on your mind, right? I, I mean, sometimes when I'm just halfway into a dream, or who knows, even in the shower, I have these brilliant ideas, right? If they stay with me, I mean, what good are they, right? So to become a creator is turning those answers that you find, the insights that you find, the innovations that you dream up into tangible outcomes. So at school, classes are moving on quickly from, the next topic to the next topic. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of maker time, if you will. And so, yeah, you have to find opportunities to kind of give yourself space to be a creator. The last one is a problem solver. I'm sure a lot of the parents who are on this call know that, in the workplace, especially, this being this kind of person makes you an important person on every team, and the person that is looked to on every team to get things done. So to become a problem solver, students need to apply their knowledge in the real world, where unexpected things happen and real constraints build adaptability. And I have a great story to kind of highlight this. We had a student recently who wants to be an engineer, knows all of the concepts, and has done so many projects kind of on his own, where there are no constraints, and you can just be super creative, and you're just sort of working on your own, and you can build these things. But then, when you go into a company that, has things that kind of come out of left field, there's a lot of things with companies that are ambiguous and then actually have constraints. It's these are the resources that you have to design with. This is the amount of time that you have to do this project. When you apply those constraints, then it kind of becomes about making choices and just basically kind of overcoming roadblocks in a way that, when you're just sort of tinkering on your own, it's just so different. So yes, encountering those real world unexpected uh, left turns and ambiguity is how you become a problem solver. So I mentioned academic research. So some people might not know what this is. So it's a structured way to explore questions or problems and discover new knowledge. And that's important because a lot of people think, oh, I do research all the time. I do research all the time too. Sometimes my daughter calls it going down the rabbit hole, right? Where she like kind of gets interested in a topic and she's reading all the things on Reddit and going on TikTok and finding all the things. This is different. This is structured, and there's an actual process that you can be trained on to basically approach a question in an academic way. This is university level research. And so it involves asking really thoughtful questions and gathering evidence, analyzing findings, and then drawing your own conclusions. And that's so key, right? You're not looking at sources that are basically people telling you what opinions you should have. You're looking at sources that basically tell you facts, and then really the hard part of the research is then deciding, okay, so what does this mean? What do I think this means? And what do I think it, like, why do I think it matters, basically? And so that's the other thing. It teaches you how to identify credible sources like peer-reviewed journals, reliable data. It helps you recognize non-credible sources that might be biased or inaccurate. And I can't overstate how important that is these days, because it seems like, you know, we are just surrounded by so many different media, like in every form, kind of telling us what our opinions should be. So academic research is hugely important to be able to kind of analytically and in a structured way do your own research. And this builds critical thinking, evidence-based reasoning, and communication skills. Because once you do, you know, that research and you figure out, you know, your insight, your answer, communicating that out then is just as big a part of the process. So communication skills that you build from it are important as well. And then what is real world work experience? We talked about how applying these concepts are important, kind of like out in the real world. Well, it's hands-on experience through a paid job. So, you know, if you're a lifeguard, if you're working at your community center, if you are, you know, working at a local coffee shop, all of those experiences actually allow you to kind of get used to that ambiguity that happens out in the real world and kind of troubleshoot when you don't have control over what's happening necessarily. Other ways, though, that are real world work experience: internships, and just industry projects, projects that you take on that are maybe for companies that have actual outcomes that will be put out into the world, that have constraints that you have to work within. And these are opportunities to collaborate with teammates and report to a manager, and that's important. It's setting you up for, you know, maybe working as a research assistant in a lab in college. It's setting you up to obviously be out there in the workplace. Like I said, projects with real world constraints, deadlines, and measurable outcomes are important to kind of have under your belt. A chance to apply classroom learning to practical, impactful work. This builds your professionalism, your communication skills again, problem solving skills, and it helps you explore potential career paths and gain confidence in professional settings. I will say that there's a big difference between learning concepts and kind of understanding things theoretically and then actually being out there in the world and doing this work. One example that comes to mind is I love psychology. I loved all of my psychology classes, and I could have studied it forever. At some point, I said, okay, I think that I'm going to be a mental health counselor, and so I started marching down that path. Well, it wasn't until actually I kind of became a junior mental health counselor that I realized, like, oh my gosh, this is hard in a way that I didn't understand. And so many of the things that I liked about psychology can be done in research, can be done in marketing, and maybe that's my better fit. It wasn't until I actually graduated from college that I even knew that. So the earlier that students can get that kind of real world immersion, the better. So yeah, why do these experiences matter? We talked about applying the concepts to the real world. Developing ownership. When you manage real projects, that happens in the academic research process. When you make decisions, you'll see the impact of your work. So whether it's, you're writing a research paper and maybe you're submitting it for publication, or you're working on an industry project and you actually see a company kind of put something that you wrote like out on their blog or something like that, and you see what the reaction is. Well, one, it builds confidence, I will say. So we'll move on to the third one, but that's your work product. You're developing ownership because you're actually putting things out into the world. You're producing, you're doing, you're creating. We talked about building confidence. We'll talk about navigating ambiguity. This is probably one of the things that come up for most employees in review cycles, I will say, is you have to work on getting more comfortable with ambiguity, which is so funny because I think humans are naturally uncomfortable with ambiguity. And so building that muscle early is important. And so research and real world projects do teach you to navigate uncertainty and kind of think independently, because you will encounter roadblocks. And it will be uncertain what to do or what even is possible. And kind of pushing through that is part of navigating ambiguity. And with this real experience, that's how you get the real growth. So academic research, real world work experience builds all of these skills that you see on the right-hand side here. So autonomy, super important. Obviously, academic capability. In the case of research, especially, you're building expertise, time management, motivation. Like I said, those roadblocks that you encounter, being able to push through them and stay motivated over the long term. Sometimes these projects are 3-6 months, kind of building that muscle to stay motivated, keep yourself motivated over time is something that will serve you well moving forward. Confidence that comes from, doing this work, becoming an expert, putting something out there. Creativity, actually building something to put out in the world. Communication skills, so communicating your findings. In the case of Polygens, we match you with PhD level mentors to do these projects. So by the end, you're having like 10-hour-long conversations at least about the topic that you love with a PhD candidate or a PhD holder. And so that one-on-one kind of real deep academic level discussion, I mean, that happens in colleges all the time. And so that type of communication skill building will definitely set you up, when it comes to looking at, your college application, and certainly with employers as well. And then good old organization, right? Like this was the thing that my middle school and high school teachers kind of got down on me the most. Those organization skills are so important. And so this is a way for you to build those as well. And
Amanda, real quick, and I hope interrupting you is okay. If you
yeah,
can go
all
back to
right.
the previous slide, dovetails into, really an interesting discussion point. And I know you and I talked about it before, this idea that it's become a skills game. And I don't think that's a new statement, but this slide really kind of focuses on it. And I wonder what your thoughts are on how you can, kind of combine what you mentioned here, the skills that are important, the skills that are naturally developed by these two types of experiences. How do you call that out on a college application? A lot of our students are asking me, you know, look, how do I tell my story? And if it's not, hey, I got a 4.0, or, I aced my math exam, like that's an easy bullet point. How do I call out that I'm a good communicator, as an example?
right. Yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of students kind of grapple with. And actually it is that college essay. It's the supplemental essays. It's the interviews that some universities offer where you're going to tell that story. We have a lot of students who apply to the University of California, right? Like UC Berkeley, UCLA, so many students' dream schools. And they have something called PIQs. So that's personal insight questions. And they ask things about, tell me about like a time where you worked on something really difficult and kind of like how you got through it, or tell me about ways that you have demonstrated leadership. And actually being able to draw from real experience, like in these cases, these projects, definitely makes you stand out, because you would be surprised how many students don't know how to answer those questions. And if they do, it's kind of squishy, right? There's nothing really like tangible to point to and say, and this is what I did. And so the way that you tell that story isn't, I have time management skills, I have motivation. It's, I, you know, have this question that I really wanted to solve because I think it's going to make an impact in the world. And I took it upon myself to dig into it. And I dedicated, 6 months of my time while I was, juggling all these other things, and I encountered these roadblocks and I didn't know like how to move forward, but I figured it out, and this is what I figured out. And then I put it out there into the world and it made this impact. And like I feel like I can do this again for X, Y, and Z. It's really about threading all of them together, not necessarily putting in keywords, right? It's about demonstrating rather than just saying the words.
What a fabulous response. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking it. All right. And the next slide actually speaks to this perfectly, because when it comes to the college results, students who have completed Polygens programs like our core academic research program and work lab report pretty incredible college admissions results. So these projects are helpful in helping students to write compelling college essays rooted in authentic stories, interviewing with confidence, right? So if you get that college interview, you've already figured out how to kind of set up a problem and talk about the process that you went through in order to come to a certain finding and what it means. Now you just kind of have to shorten that a little bit and kind of let your confidence and your passion kind of come through, and you have something specific and really interesting to talk about in these interviews. And this demonstrates initiative, it demonstrates resilience. And so, yeah, it transitions really smoothly into college level research and internships. If you've done projects like this, when you put in your resume, for example, trying to get some of those coveted research assistant positions at the labs at the college that you attend, you've got to one up. You've done this before, and not only have you done it before, you've done it in your own project. Same thing with internships. So when it comes to the college admissions results, and these are specific to Polygens students, so Polygens alumni, 96% of the students who applied to R1 universities were accepted. And R1 universities are those universities that are basically accredited with doing the top levels of research in the United States. When it comes to the Ivy League, I know a lot of people kind of dream of Ivy. Our students report 4.5 times the acceptance rate than the national average. So you can see the national average blended across all the Ivies, about 5.4%. Our students report 24%. And then that US News and World Report top 25 university list that everybody loves, 9.2% overall acceptance rate, kind of national average. Our students report 51%, and that's 5.5 times the national average. So really, having those stories to tell, having those projects to demonstrate all of these skills that you've built, it definitely comes through in the numbers that it makes a difference. I would say even more importantly, though, because at Polygens, we really do believe that college admissions, while it's super top of mind, it's one kind of milestone in somebody's kind of long path forward and of success. So we follow up with our alumni even after they get into a college, when they're 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 years into their undergrad. And we do surveys with them, and we actually sometimes visit them on campus and do interviews and things. So 94% say that their Polygens project taught them how to work independently and set their own goals. 93% say their Polygens experience taught them time management and organization skills. 90% say their experience prepared them for college level writing. Remember, like I said, this is college level research, not going down the rabbit hole, and this is college level writing. So full academic research papers. And 94% say their experience prepared them for college level academic discussions. And that is a thinker and a doer and a creator and a problem solver. When you're in the room and conversations are happening and you have something to contribute, that's the kind of student that universities want on their campus and part of their campus community. And so these are really great ways for you to become that. So you might be wondering, how does this relate to Envision? Thank you, Jan, for inviting me to talk with everybody today. Envision students learn new concepts during their time on campus and in the programs, and they often wish that they could explore them more at home, but they might not have the opportunities to do it. And that's where Polygons comes in. So you can take the sparks of inspiration that you got in the summer, whether it was a medical program, and you sort of uncovered a desire to figure out the why behind a certain disease, or explore what might be potential treatments in the future, or an engineering problem, or something to do with law. Then you can turn that inspiration into a tangible project. So an academic paper. When it comes to computer science, you could make a mobile app. We've had students make documentaries about, history and law, and podcasts. So all of these outcomes are still building those really valuable future-ready skills. And so these combined experiences, so being on campus, kind of getting a taste of those careers. Like I said, remember the story I told about, counseling, but kind of getting a taste of it before you have to make those decisions. And then with that information, being able to make more informed decisions for yourself. So having that experience, finding that inspiration on campus, and then turning it into something tangible really adds up, stacks up to a compelling story that demonstrates, who you are, what you're interested in, that you're curious and you can make something out of that curiosity. You have the capability, to kind of succeed in college and beyond. And that makes a difference in that college admissions moment. I wanted to share this video. This is a story. I think it's like a 1.5-minute video of Chloe, who is one of our students. I want you to open your ears and kind of pick up on the different skills that she built, and how she became a thinker, a doer, a problem solver, a creator through her Polygons project.
Amanda, I don't think the volume's coming through.
Oh, tragedy. Hold on one second.
I mean, worst case, we can circulate it with the video, but I was afraid of this, even though it worked in the practice session.
I know. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna try sharing again, and we're gonna go here. We'll try one more time. We'll go here to slideshow.
No, it's not coming in.
Tragedy. Okay. All right. Well, I will go back to sharing my slides then. And yes, we can post the video alongside the recording. See, this is what happens in the real world, right?
Yes, the tech gremlin.
Yes, exactly. So this is just a prompt for the people on the call, for the people who might be watching the webinar later. When it comes to college admissions, how will you show college admissions that you're a thinker, a doer, a creator, and a problem solver? This is a question that you can kind of think about. You should talk with your parents about it. You should talk with your, counselors about it, talk with your friends about it. And if you think about it, it's a fun question. It might feel a little heavy, but it's also fun, because it's not, how do I get my GPA up? It's how do I become what I want to be? Which is always kind of a fun conversation to have, and one that is ongoing even into adulthood, I will say. All right, that's all we have. So any questions?
me come off mute and ask you a few. So I'm going to paraphrase a couple here. Lots of tremendous content, so thank you for that. And I love continuing to go back to the idea of of it being a skills game, and also the focus on telling your story. But from a tactical standpoint, I think some of the hardest things to do these days for our parents and students is engage the conversation. So I wonder if you have any recommendations on both ways. If you're a parent, how do you stop your life for a second, turn your attention on your student, not from the standpoint of did you do your homework or what did you get on your test, but more so, hey, let's talk about, how you can build yourself outside of the classroom. And then vice versa on the student side, how do you get your nose out of your phone for, 90 seconds with when you have your parents' attention? As I think you and I mentioned and talked before, the idea of the sitting around the dinner table and talking is a rarity these days. But I wonder if you can't offer some suggestions to our audience on how they can spark those conversations.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, I am a parent, right? So I have two daughters. I have a 12-year-old and one who's almost 16. So I feel this question very much because it can be really hard to start those conversations. Um, and starting the conversation by like, hey, what's catching your eye? Like, what college major are you thinking about, or what job do you want to do? I can tell you that that hasn't worked for me anyway. But what has worked has been like, hey, what has been on your mind lately? Like, what problems or questions like out in the world do you wonder about or wish you could figure out an answer to? And that's really illuminating, right? Because the types of questions that kind of weigh on a student's mind, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be like, bummer questions, but it could be like things that they wonder. Where is their curiosity? Even like, what's the weirdest question that's come to your mind lately where you've like wanted to figure something out? Those are engaging, and it's kind of it will help to turn the mirror back on them to like what actually does catch their attention in this crazy world where we're running miles per minute, and there's just so many things going on. And that could be the start of the conversation. And so yeah, don't think macro, like what job, what college major. It's what did you wonder today?
That's fantastic. I have a 15-year-old, and depending on the day, sometimes it's easier to extract information than other days. I'm going to use that. We have a baseball game tonight, so on the way, I'm gonna ask him that question and see what type of response I get. I know you touched on this, shifting gears slightly to back to the college application. And first of all, kudos. I'm not surprising we think alike. I love your team at Polygents, and I just love the overall mentality. What I'm referring to here is, the stepping stone. College admissions is not a destination; it's only part of the journey. And over my 20-year career in this non-traditional education space, it's really been about educating parents of that, because I'm asked the question almost every time out of the gate: what does my kid need to do to get into XYZ school? Right. So I'll start by asking the question, how, and again, you touched on it a little bit, but how do you take, whether it's the skills you're developing in a program like Work Lab, or whether it's the immersion that you're getting in a core research experience, how do you pull that together on a college application to make it, you know, and I think your words in one of the slides, thread, that thread of continuity. I would wonder if you have some recommendations for the audience on that.
Yeah. So the way that I've seen a lot of students do it, and of course, it's tricky because you have to know what story you want to tell before you can kind of then do it. And that comes to kind of then knowing what direction you want to go. And that's so overwhelming for so many students at this age. So it's just like, it's an interesting push pull. But the way that I've seen students kind of tie all of these things together is that they kind of follow the path. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to all be the same thing, but they're able to kind of show how their interests shifted, how maybe something sparked something here and they followed it there, and then they built something and they learned something new, and then it came here. And for all of the extracurriculars that happen, the classes that they choose to take, the experiences that they choose to have, if they can kind of narrate that path and then how they got to where they're at today, and where they're at today doesn't have to be somebody who knows exactly that they want to be pre-med and they're going to study, molecular and cellular biology undergrad, and then they're going to do pre-med, and then they want to specialize in pediatrics. They don't need to know that. But they basically need to know kind of generally where they want to go next for that next spark, that next thing that maybe will open their eyes and will bring them into a slightly curved path moving forward. But it's also really important to show that like you have the drive and the curiosity and the motivation to follow that kind of path. And so telling that story and threading those experiences together in that way, it's not building a package. I know that a lot of people kind of say, oh, tie it up in a bow. Like this is the profile of student that I am. But it's like, this was my journey. And this is everything I learned along the way.
A pretty fabulous response. Thank you.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
the kind of the last part that I want to key in on here. We talked about the college application. We talked about the skills development. We talked about all the different traits that a student has to have. We talked about the conversations between parent and student and how we, continue to engage them. I wonder, shifting focus just a little bit with your experience in Polygens, do you have a favorite project? I know we had that great video and we're going to share it with the audience and they'll get a sense of, what the students, but I was always impressed when I was first introduced to you all at the creativity that is drawn out in the student body. And so I wonder, with our last question, if you can give us what's your favorite thing that a student has created.
That is so hard to answer because like there are just so many great ones. I will say I will give a STEM one and a non-STEM one. How's that? So I naturally kind of gravitate to humanities, obviously, because I pursued psychology and things like that. So, and also I'm a huge history buff. So there was a student who had an upcoming trip that was planned with her family where she was going back to her mom's village in China. And she was like, I'm really excited about going. I don't know a whole lot about, the area. Like I want to do a research project to like just basically understand so that I can have like the context for when I go there. And so she did this research project and she learned all about the history, and it was a fishing town. And so she learned about like, how like the local economy is and all of that. So she learned all of these things. And then she went on this trip. And what she did then was she brought her video camera and she took video footage of all these things that she had learned about the fishing industry, the arts, the unique arts of this village and this general area. And she created a documentary about it, which it's just beautifully filmed and it's just visual storytelling. And so she ended up winning at a local film festival for high schoolers. It was like, I think that it was like the Palm Springs High School Independent Film Festival. Beautiful. And I just like, it was so moving because it was personal to her. Her visual style was incredible and it was so well researched that it wasn't, it's not just like a travel video, right? Like it's where I'm learning something about this place as well. So I love that project. And then the STEM project that I love was actually a student who was inspired to look into Alzheimer's disease because one of her grandparents suffered from it. So again, it came from a personal place, which so many of our projects do. And so she wanted to explore the potential for CRISPR-Cas9. And now I'm getting a little bit like technical, but this is genetic engineering. This specific method, like, what potential does it have to treat Alzheimer's disease? And she did this project and she turned it into a research project. But then also she took that and turned it into a comic book that discusses Alzheimer's, why it happens, um, to basically break it down for families, young people in families whose family member might be suffering and who don't understand why, now grandpa's having a hard time remembering, or worse, doesn't remember me, in a really engaging way and an interesting way, because so many of our young people read graphic novels now and are kind of into that comic style. So it was just an incredibly insightful and thoughtful way to communicate something even beyond that research paper. So I love that one too, just for it kind of, you know, going outside of the traditional.
Well, and I love, well, first of all, thank you for both of those, because I have these tremendous visuals now of, not only the student learning process, but, going back to your point on being a creator. And what I love about the second one is it's taking something that the student does routinely and applying it to a really advanced concept. And that's what I have always thought, when I see some of the examples that you all produce, like it's really a unique learning experience that can take, theory and what a student may learn in the classroom, out of the classroom, wherever, but it applies it in a really unique and interesting way. So um, I'll kind of close up with that, because it's great, and we'll say thank you. I appreciate your time, the talent, the amount of energy that you all devote to the student learning. It's been a pleasure being your partner for now more than a year, and I look forward to what this next cycle brings.
Same here. Thank you for having me. Thanks
Have a
everybody for
great
joining.
evening.
You too. Bye.